Oh yeah.
You can't
We
see.
got a theme song.
You can't see, but I'm dancing.
We got a theme
I'm dancing
song.
to the wah,
And it's a banger. You promised a
wah.
banger.
I wouldn't call this a banger, but it's
Okay.
not an insult.
Okay.
It's dopey. It's fun.
I
it's
think
like
it's fun.
us.
Let's run with it.
Well, we have to now.
We don't have to.
I mean, we do.
I like it. I'd like to know what people think about it. If anyone wants to comment
Copyrighted
in.
and, all that stuff.
I think it hits a lot of the tones of our show. It's a bit geeky. It's a little bit retro. It's got some good vibes. Well, anyway.
Anyway, yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Podcast Assemble. The show we're going to talk about all our geeky interests. We're going to be talking about movies and TV shows, comic books, and video games. My name's Tommy. I'm delighted as always to be repped from my... I can't remember the fucking words. What do I normally say? Let's do this. Joined is the word. Okay,
Joined is the word.
Joined by my friend and co-host from across the pond, Wet Thor.
Drey. And
How
now
are you, mate?
I'm delighted. I'm delighted. I'm good. I'm delighted that now I've turned my mic and I get to look at you when I talk to you. Your beautiful face.
I appreciate that. That's
Yeah.
very, very polite.
No problem.
Well, to be fair, like at least the room's the same way around for this 1 week.
Yeah, we've gotten like it's now 3 weeks running, maybe 2.
You've got the karma of it right.
Yeah,
it's not going to move
the
around in
feng
ways.
shui, it's all good.
Feng shui. What did I
I
say
think we
last
made
week?
this same joke last week, actually.
Yeah. Well,
to be fair.
well, that's the point. I'm riffing off last week's joke.
Yeah, but even like the feng shui comment, I think that this bit has
I'm
been
absolutely
used.
down to be perfectly honest. I don't mind. I mean, who cares
In
at this
any
point?
case, I'm doing well, man.
It's complete nonsense.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm feeling a little bit coldy today. A little bit. I wonder if it's jokes. It's like getting summertime here now. Like I have a fan pointed at me constantly, so I wonder if it's almost just like the fan just
It's
making
your
me
mistake. Yeah, that's the mistake. You
Like,
gotta
it's so
just
fucking hot.
just sleep naked.
Well, I mean, I do.
It's the only answer in the Sydney
What more
heat
do I?
with no AC. Just sleep naked.
Yeah, I wish I could get.
Yeah, man, I'm
AC.
excited today to talk about not just our love of comic books and video games and movies, but a mix of both of those two things potentially.
It's going to be an exciting one.
Video games and movies / TV shows /
I can't wait. Actually, it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, what have you been up to then? Like, talk to me. What have you been doing in this space?
To be honest, man, I haven't seen a lot of new stuff. I watched Sisters Brothers.
I don't know that. What is that?
It's a Netflix original. It's a Western, actually.
Okay.
Which I'd be down to talk
Bring
about.
back the Western.
Yeah, I would be down to talk about like top 5 Westerns as a complete side.
Oh, throw it in there. Why not?
Side subject. But
Can we not talk about Aliens vs. Cowboys? Probably the worst movie of all time.
God, I forgot that existed.
Is that Seth
Who was in
MacFarlane?
that?
Seth MacFarlane, right? No. Daniel Craig. I'm thinking.
Daniel. What is
I'm
he?
thinking of A Million Ways to Die in the West.
Yeah,
whatever
which
it's called.
also like fair enough. Like those things kind of blend together. What was Daniel Craig doing in a movie called Cowboys vs. Aliens?
Dude, I have no idea.
Like he was.
I can't even remember the movie. I don't think I watched it.
At all points of his career, he was better than that. I would say. Not that I've seen
all
this
points
movie.
of his career. That's a strong.
I mean, like I guess all points of his career that I've known him.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, the first thing I remember him from was Layer Cake. Do you remember Layer Cake? Did you ever see that?
Yeah, it's a drug movie, isn't it?
Yeah. It's in the sort of vein of like.
I don't think I've ever seen it, but it's on Netflix, and I wanted to watch it.
Yeah. Very much. It's very much in the same vein as like A Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, but probably with a class turned up slightly. I'd say in terms of like they put on the British accent more when they're doing it.
Yeah.
It's really good. Actually, I'd highly recommend. It's definitely worth a watch. It's him much younger.
Anyway, Sisters Brothers.
Yeah.
Sisters Brother. No, Sisters
I'm gonna check
Brothers.
it out.
It's a very confusing name. Joaquin Phoenix.
Send me a link after. I'll check it out.
Yeah, dude. It's Joaquin Phoenix. It's Jake Gyllenhaal, John C. Reilly, Riz Ahmed, who you may have seen in other things like
I don't
Star
know.
Wars, Rogue One. He's a crazy guy.
I haven't seen that. I still haven't seen
It's
it.
like the best one.
I know. I've seen the Vader scene at the end. That's all I need to know. It's that scene.
What is it?
That's what Star Wars should be.
when he's going
When Vader
badass,
just goes hectic on those guys.
He's also in what is that movie? Not movie, miniseries on HBO. It's called like The Night, or like it was about this court case. Anyway, I'll get to it in a sec. I'll look it up. But Sisters Brother, good Western, good take on the Western.
Branching out, I love it.
Was a big fan.
Well, I mean, a lot of good. I mean, like that's one sort of area that, and an MCU sort of like the key differentiator for me for the MCU is that they try a lot of different styles of their movies, and like a Western would be difficult to do in terms of an MCU movie, but I mean, it's not out of the realms. Like if you just take some of the themes and some of the nuances of that film genre, why not?
Yeah, for sure.
And what else have you been watching? What else have you been up to?
That's the main thing. I've actually been reading. There's a new. I got going full nerd here.
Oh, go hit me.
Full high fantasy. A new Stormlight Archive book that just came out. I think last Tuesday.
Okay.
So it's the 5th book. I think. Did we talk about this last week?
I didn't think so.
I'm still reading it. Anyway, it's Bryan Sanderson, the guy who finished the Wheel of Time series.
Oh, okay.
Made this series his own series, and it's the 5th book in like what's going to be 10. He just churns them out though, man. This guy.
Damn.
Every 2 or 3 years. He's not like George R. R. Martin just sitting in the wherever he is doing nothing, eating Tex-Mex,
waiting to die. Yeah.
Yeah. He churns them out. So I'm a fan.
What does he do with his time?
Build really, really good literature, but just take a really long time to do it. Yeah, so that's kind of the extent of what I've been doing, man.
Oh, fun. I mean, this week I finally got around to finishing The Boys, and I'm chuffed. The Boys season 2. It's one thing that I should have done ages ago, but like I say, I have this sort of... It's kind of against the culture of the moment of completely binging everything at the moment it comes out and everything dropping all at once. At the moment, if I like a program, I like to take my time with it and like spread it out, do it week by week. I kind of like that sort of water cooler feel to watching TV, you know? Like,
yeah,
having something to talk about. Like, but then no one ever does that. Like my girlfriend, for example, she will binge an entire show in a day and a half. And I'm like... You've just like that's all your content gone.
Yeah. I also
be patient.
like I didn't realize how much I missed it until like The Mandalorian has reset that. It's probably the first show that I've actually done this with since like Game of Thrones.
Oh, really?
Episode like where I've had to wait every week, like had to because everything lately is just on Netflix.
I'm behind on that. I haven't watched any of that this week. I need to.
But
I hear it's real good.
But point, I actually now I'm a fan of it. It gives you something to look forward to during the week.
Well, it's interesting. Maybe we could have a chat about it next week. I'll catch up and like. Interesting if they've gone for, you know how we talked a couple of weeks back about how we felt it was getting stale in certain areas, bring that back and sort of say like, oh, did it do the things we said it needed to bring us back into
kind of, but I'm almost like thinking they're doing it and creating a new character that's going to have their own offshoot show.
Yeah, probably.
And that it's not actually going to be this overarching
I know who
thing.
it is. It's it's Ahsoka Tano, right?
Yeah, but also like she was badass, so I'd be down with that. But like I feel like we're not going to see her again. It's kind of like her preview, and then she's gonna.
Okay.
We'll see. I don't know.
Tell me because, like I say, I haven't seen it. I'm a couple of episodes behind.
Anyway, what I was going to say, Riz Ahmed, by the way, The Night of. Okay. It's a single season, 8-episode series on HBO that's really freaking good, and that's where I first saw Riz Ahmed.
HBO.
Yeah, way back when.
We don't have Binge yet, so we need to work on that first.
Yeah, for sure.
Binge is the Australian version of HBO for anyone who doesn't know. All owned by a horrible human being who no one really wants to talk about. So let's move.
Murdoch?
Yeah. Look, unless he's going to sponsor us and give us a lot of money, I don't give a shit. He's a weird old man.
Yeah.
Well, let's not dig our grave too soon, right? Well, do you want to talk a little bit about the news? What's been happening in the world?
Oh God, I don't have any news. Everything I looked up was pretty old. Like, well, I wanted to do it in line with what we're doing today.
Sure.
And I couldn't really find. There was some leaked stuff for the Resident Evil game movie.
Yeah. Cool. Wait, is it show or a movie? That's Netflix.
It's a show. There was a couple screenshots of some sets with a mansion.
Yeah,
or something.
I did see that. Yeah.
But that was like 2 weeks ago. So to be honest, there was nothing new. So
yeah,
I'm leaning on you for news.
Oh, I was just going to talk generally comic book stuff. So I mean, if you do have anything specific, go for it. But we can start with the kind of pretty sad news that David Prowse, the actor who originally played Darth Vader in the Star Wars movies, passed away at age 85. This guy's a true legend of cinema. Like he. Brought to life one of the most compelling villains probably cinema will see. But fun fact about him as well, he also trained Christopher Reeves, going back to one of our old shows, to get in shape for Superman. How cool is that?
That's awesome.
He literally trained Superman. Darth Vader.
Impressive.
And trained Superman. I mean, that's pretty awesome if you ask me. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's a resume.
Well, a couple of other bits, and I'll skip through these because, it's been a pretty slow week for news. A really interesting one was that Godzilla vs. Kong, you know the movie. So, they've essentially built this cinematic universe where there's the new King Kong movie and the new Godzilla movie.
I didn't realize they were in the same universe.
They are.
Yeah.
But
now.
The new movie is Godzilla vs. Kong. That is the new movie. And apparently Netflix put an offer in of around $200 million to secure the rights to have it on their streaming service, but Time Warner apparently blocked it and said no.
Why would you spend that much money on that movie?
It's a pretty big tentpole movie, and I'd love to watch it.
Yeah, but are you gonna join Netflix for that?
Well, I mean, that's what they're hoping.
I guess that's what they're hoping.
Yeah,
but I just don't think people.
This
would.
is what we talked about last week, though. You sign up to a thing. Look at us in Disney Plus. You sign up to it. You're just gonna be on there for a year,
for sure. But for the Mandalorian, not for fucking Kong. It's very different. I don't know.
It's true, anyway. But I mean, it depends on the person, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
Well, Another one, quick one to mention, Johnny Depp has officially been cast as Grindelwald.
He's back.
No, sorry, Johnny Depp has obviously left. I'm talking about Mads Mikkelsen has officially been cast.
Oh, okay. I was like,
replacement.
ooh, wow.
That's quite a swift change. I don't know why they didn't go for him in the first place, because they literally made Johnny Depp look like Mads Mikkelsen for the role. It's like, just get the guy who also already has a sinister accent and isn't acting like a drunk pirate. Like,
Fair enough.
you know what I mean? Like, he actually suits the part. He's going to be great. I've got good feelings about that.
I didn't see the last Harry Potter movie. I was kind of like over this Fantastic Beasts storyline, but
So I saw it. My brother and his wife love those movies, and I went to see it with them at the cinema.
yeah.
I think they bought us it for Christmas present. It was when I was back in the UK last year, and yeah, it was fine. Like it was very telegraphed. I could really see what was happening, like 1,000 miles away. It was like, okay, well, that's going to happen. But I don't really like the movies. I'm not going to lie. But do
you like none of them? You don't even like. I like the originals. I'm like, I don't love them, but I'll watch them. These ones were like, I wasn't even interested.
Exactly that. I love the Harry Potter books growing up, so I sort of grew up with them almost like through time, and I bloody love them. Yeah. Could read them now and be happy.
God, I feel like we talked about this last week as well.
I don't think we did. Not on the show.
It's so hard to remember.
We do hang
what
out a lot outside
chat?
of just chatting in this. You know
what
that,
is
right?
this podcast? It's like it's a
look. The difference
it's a whirlwind.
The difference between you and me is I edit this fucking thing, so I have to listen back to all the crap we talk about.
You would have to.
I generally know. Well, I'll give you a couple more then. So, have you ever been a fan of Doctor Who?
Not a fan, but I'm like trying to remember it.
Okay, well,
first I got him confused with Mr. Gadget in my head for a second there, and then the Mr. Gadget theme song went in my head. Do you remember the Mr.
Can we
Gadget
just talk about Dr. Gadget?
Is it Doc? I'm pretty sure it's Mr. I'm talking about something very different.
What are you talking about?
It's like a cartoon.
Yeah, I'm sure. Inspector Gadget.
Inspector
Gadget. Fuck me, how are we both?
That is a blast from the past.
That is a serious blast from the past.
Fucking Captain Planet last week, this week, Mr.
Oh my god, I'd love to see a Captain Planet cinematic version. That'd be so good.
Anyway.
Look, they've announced that they're releasing a new Doctor Who on New Year's Day.
No,
It's probably going to be the Daleks again. Who cares? Like, I think everyone likes their first Doctor, and that's how you kind of go. And I really loved Tennant as the Doctor. Matt Smith I enjoyed. I thought he was quirky and fun, but I thought had some really bad writing behind him. They then switched over to... I nearly said Lewis Capaldi then. Christ. They then switched over to Capaldi, who isn't a singer, and he was great. But I'd already lost interest by that point. So now it's got a female Doctor, and I just have no interest in going back to it. So it's a shame, because I did really love it for a moment there.
Gotta be honest, man. Literally no idea what Doctor Who is, and I'm just disappointed that it's not Mr. Inspector Gadget. Like, now that you got my head in this place, I'm like, why don't they just
Inspector Gadget?
Like, Inspector Gadget needs to be the anyway. What is the? Can you give me the backstory of this? It's got an 8.2 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Doctor Who's great.
2012.
Look, maybe we'll do a little section on it at some point, because I especially if we were talking about the earlier Doctor Who stuff, I could definitely geek out on that. But for the moment, if you don't know anything about it, I don't think. Look, Save Daredevil, hashtag Save Daredevil was trending this week. It was finally the rights of Daredevil are going back to Marvel. Finally. And people really, like we did talk about this a couple of weeks ago. They really want that Charlie Cox version of Matt Murdock back as Daredevil. I do, you do. That's all we need to say. Hashtag Save Daredevil. Put it on your social medias. Okay, so friend of the show, Steve, if you remember, messaged us last week about a new actor, Dan Stevens, who was potentially being cast as Professor X. Mm-hmm. Now, he did message back, and I just wanted to say I do actually know who this guy is.
Okay.
Friend of the show, Steve, says we missed the fact that he played an anti-hero type of guy in an X-Men-based show called Legion. I don't know if you know Legion.
I've heard of it.
I saw the first episode, really enjoyed it, and then forgot to watch any more of it, which is very me.
What is it on?
I can't honestly remember, but he's not just from Downton Abbey. This dude is essentially, to the best of my knowledge, he has a split personality, but each of his personality has a different superpower, and he was actually really good in that. I remember he isn't just a Downton Abbey guy.
Okay, fair enough.
Which I think that's pretty cool, and he was very good in that.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, that's pretty much all of the news, unless you're interested in Van Helsing. I don't care either. I didn't even care when it was Hugh Jackman, so they're apparently doing another one.
The only Van Helsing I like is the one from Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Wait, what? What's that? Oh, yeah.
Van Helsing, I'll kill him.
That's so good. I can't believe that didn't click in my head.
To be fair, it's only like one line in it. It's actually about like the song he sings, isn't it?
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
It's about Dracula, not Van Helsing, I think.
Van Helsing's in it though. He makes like a really brief cameo.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like we're talking super brief. But unless you brought any weird news for the week.
No, let me see if I can pull something up in the meantime. But
nah, don't stress.
For now,
well, why don't you then preface our conversation for the week?
Okay, this week we decided
main topic theme.
Yeah, we don't have that theme yet. Today's topic is basically video games that we believe should be adapted to some kind of medium of television or film. I think is the two that we're kind of looking at today. We're going to explore why, what we like about them, kind of, hey, why it would work in whatever venue we think, who we think should maybe be casted in some of these.
Ooh, fan casting.
You know, fan casting a bit. I don't want to spend too much time on that because there's so many options. Who should even direct it in some cases, but, you know, the themes of it and really, you know, why it should be created.
Love it.
And I think we each picked 3. Is that what we did?
Well,
we'll see what we get to.
Well, I picked 3, but then there's a few others that I quite like the idea of. But I mean, let's just bounce off each other. I mean, that's the main thing, right?
Yeah, I picked 3 big ones that I did like actual analysis on. I was like, okay, actually,
analysis. Damn.
Who would I? Well, I was like, who would I cast? That was the hardest part. I'm like, I don't actually know actor names, so I'm like that guy from that
Oh my
thing.
god, me too.
And I'm on IMDb for
I don't
hours.
know any new actors either.
Yeah, well, and then when I couldn't think of anything, I was just like, yeah, just cast somebody unknown. That's exactly what they need for this. Just an unknown actor.
Unknown Brit.
Couldn't be fucked. Yeah, an unknown Brit, more like all the unknown actors that come into these shows.
I love
it.
like Stranger Things, for example, is a prime example of, for me, basically unknowns coming in and just smashing the show.
Yeah, Thrones too. I think that was the first time I actually like saw and loved something where I didn't know 90% of the actors.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I know a lot of them were from like BBC stuff.
Yeah.
But.
Well, I know. The weird thing is, I occasionally see random stuff, and I was in the gym the other day, and on one of the, I go to the gym. I like to stay fit.
Armsy likes to stay fit. Who could tell?
On one of the TV screens,
as his biceps rip through the shirt.
On one of the TV screens, I'm not even going to indulge you on this. They had an old TV show on, and I don't even know what it was, but it was like 2 or 3 of the actors from Game of Thrones, like Ned Stark's wife, completely. She was in it, and I just remember seeing someone else being like, the other person was either in Harry Potter or Game of Thrones. I was like, now I know where you started. You were in this piece of crap TV show.
I think a lot of them were in like crap TV shows, but that was their big kind of.
Yeah,
you can still be unknown and be in like a sitcom
absolutely.
show, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Well, so our main theme then, our main topic, we're going to be talking about video games that we would like to see translated into a cinematic medium. So, Drey, what's your first one? What did you go with?
Debating which one to start with. All right, I think I'm going to go with Alan Wake, but this one's hard for me because I actually didn't finish this game.
Oh, okay.
But and it was so long ago. I think it got released in like 2010 or something.
Well, I'm going to throw out there my third one I'm going to share with you. I haven't got anywhere near finishing. I've only played it, but I know the storyline.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I obviously looked up the storyline for this, but yeah, I think Alan Wake would be a really, really interesting kind of adaptation to probably a movie.
Okay.
I don't think there's enough content to make it like a show.
Right.
But if you're going to like put it into like a synopsis in a sentence, it's kind of like a broken writer who's experiencing writer's block. And by broken, I mean obviously has like past trauma in his life that's hinted at throughout the beginning. Wakes up in an apparent creation of his own novel that he's kind of living, that he doesn't remember writing, and fights a supernatural threat or what might be even demons from his own kind of subconscious in order to like find his wife and basically save this town that he's
very
living
Silent
in.
Hill.
So yeah, it's like exactly. It's kind of like that, but it's also it's interesting. It's just an interesting concept because it.
Okay. Yeah, my brother used to love this game.
It was just so weird and new, and I could just totally. And I don't think you would make like direct. This is one where I would be okay if they didn't stay with the source material, but kind of use it as like an influence by.
So what's the genre then?
I would say it's almost like psychological sci-fi thriller.
Ooh,
is what I'd call it.
That's a lot of genres.
If I was gonna critique the plot, I think they go a little too far in the sci-fi. It's really heady.
Because all I remember is there's something with a torch, right?
Yeah. So basically, there's this like
Real deep analysis from me there. I really thought I'd help out.
there's this like entity that starts to like take over the town, and the story is driven by this entity and the plot that he has apparently written, which kind of starts to mirror his own life.
Cool.
I believe.
So what do you think? What then makes you think it would work well on film?
I just think it's got like that element where if you got the right director, the right actors, and actually made a script that was less video game driven. So basically everything.
Say that about anything.
So basically everything. It's got no, but
I later said about anything.
I just think it could be really good, not just like good. Like I'm like, okay, if you got like a director that had done psychological thrillers before, and you got an actor who could, like, if you got like an Oscar Isaac. Someone who's like that, like could play that haunted, like
your favorite actor
writer role, or even like a Viggo Mortensen.
Oh yeah,
like so he could be an older actor.
He's pretty older now, to be fair.
To be fair, he is. But you could. I was thinking about it. You could have an older actor in this. It's like a successful author is the guy, and those guys aren't always young. They've been around the block.
Your fave George R.R.
And he's no, definitely not him. He's definitely not young. Not getting younger, and he's he's suffering from writer's block. Like that could be anybody, right?
Yeah, it's cool. I like it. So what are the visuals then? So like from my memory, it's quite dark and quite like
it was really ahead of its time with like lighting.
Yeah.
But yeah, the visual like in the game you're like fighting these like dark entities that are like vessels of like that like sometimes represent people.
Okay.
That you're like, okay, is this someone from his past? Is this someone from a story?
Okay.
And yeah, I just think it'd be a really good experiment. Like the themes are kind of explore the creator's torment, right? Like how nothing is ever satisfied. Like when you're like that fine line between like genius and maniac and insane. It's like that's where creativity.
I feel like that's this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're going for.
Wait, is there somewhere on that line? Is that nonsense?
Yeah. Well, nonsense is on the far left of that. It's not in that fine,
that infinite
it's
line.
Not in that fine line. I don't think we're treading that line. Candidly, I think that, this is garbage. I don't know what we're doing here.
But man, garbage is strong.
He's it's a really interesting exploration of like the creator's torment and like never being satisfied with your work, but also wanting to like have it be loved, and also like what power creativity is also usually tragedy and things like that. So I think you could take that element of it and make it less supernatural, because in the game, like it ends up being this supernatural entity that like feeds off of creative power, and it's taken over this guy's life.
It's literally a metaphor.
Yeah.
Right. Got it.
So I think you could make it a little bit more in his own, a little more heady and a little less supernatural, and it'd be really good.
Did you have any directors in mind?
I did write some down for this one actually. I don't think you would ever do this, but if you look at like Martin Scorsese, what he did with Shutter Island, that's what I imagine this, but like as like not a detective, as a novel writer who's had a past trauma as a writer. Also, David Fincher, he's just done a lot of thrillers. I think he could pull something like this off. Yeah. And Denis, you remember this guy from The Arrival? Denis Villeneuve. He's done a lot of weird things like this. Like
I love Denis Villeneuve.
There's another one that he did with Jake Gyllenhaal. I forget what it's called. I think it's like The Imposter or something. Okay. And it's just about this guy who meets like I've been talking a lot, but I guess that's the point of a podcast. It's about this guy who meets a guy that looks exactly like him, but is different in these odd ways. So it's a self-reflection kind of thing. I feel like he could do something really cool with this.
That's really cool. Yeah. I really like that idea. It's different as well, because I think a lot of psychological horrors these days can sort of lean a bit too far into the horror aspect, but this seems like it's going to be more focused on the actual psyche and like the personality behind what's going on, which is really interesting. And that's kind of like the Silent Hill movies. I know I said that before, but like that was their problem. They went way too far into the horror and not enough into the actual story of the psyche breaking behind the human, which is really fun.
The way I think about this one is like you could have a supernatural element, but it would have to be tied to the characters, a lot like The Haunting of Hill House, if you've seen that on Netflix. Like
I haven't. I know you said it's really great.
It's really character driven, and that's what I would imagine this to be. Anyway,
fun. Should I give you
now
my
let's hear your first one?
Okay, so my first one is a very different. In fact, all mine seem to be similarly toned for some reason, but I guess that's just the type of game that I would get. That I would play.
My two are as well.
Yeah.
Coming up.
Okay, well, this one, the first one I was going to go with is God of War from 2018, which is probably one of my favorite games. I mean, easily the last 5 years, if not more. It builds on all of the things that the original God of War games created and just turns into something completely different.
That game is like all those games. It's like the one series I've never played, but every time I look at a review, it's like 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
and I really should play these games.
Well, I was looking through the games that I played and thinking back, and I was like, what's the least obvious one? And I've obviously come right back to the most fucking obvious one because it's the one that everybody.
That's how I ended up in Alan Wake, bro.
God of War 2018.
Yeah, but like the other two of mine are pretty popular, so that's why I
think mine will be as well. But I think so. I mean, the film itself, it's a big cinematic, sort of high fantasy, follows around protagonist Kratos, and he now has a son, which is the real crux of the game. Yeah. So this guy who was originally the God of War, or became the God of War through the other games, who was this brutal, slaying Spartan, now has to nurture this youth who's with him, and it's a really interesting twist on the story. And he goes on an adventure through. So the original ones are based on Greek mythology. Mm-hmm. And then these ones, funnily enough, and then this one is now this is based on like the Norse gods. So he then goes on a adventure in the game through some of the 9 realms. It's an action adventure hack and slash, so there's so much you could do with that. But the interesting thing for me is about this game, it really plays off well the difference between those hack and slash elements and the real pensive moments where it's just him and he just says boy a lot. He never calls him by his name till right at the end. He always calls him boy. Yeah, it's really like really interesting and
kind of like Baby Yoda. It's not his actual name, but
kind of.
Sorry,
I think it's just more of an aggression, more of an aggressive thing. Yeah, well, a little bit there. But the thing I like about this is it's focused on the character progression. It's not necessarily just. It's obviously a very good hack and slash game. They've built a lot of new elements into it, and it's just so good though, the relationships within it and the character progression you see. And I would love to see like a pre-Hobbit Peter Jackson putting something like this together.
I used Peter Jackson as well for another one of mine.
There might be some overlay. I mean, obviously some of the best directors, right? But like the way he built the worlds and the way he used the characters from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
he didn't just plonk them in this world. He created them, and we really felt like in the original trilogy. I mean, now he just does everything CGI, but in the first place, I really did like that. And if you know anything, every fancaster in the world is definitely going to say to you they want Jason Momoa to play Kratos because he's just. You imagine him with a shaved head, he would fit this to the ground.
Surely, though, he needs. Yeah, I guess he would look like such a badass.
Yeah.
And isn't Kratos like? I guess it doesn't really matter, but isn't he for some reason like really white? Is that something to do with the storyline, or
it's something to do with his Spartan, his Ghost of Spartan. I think I should know this. I don't.
Okay.
But the interesting thing about this is as well, if you wanted to look at it a slightly different way, and you wanted to look at the previous, I think it's 4 installments where it sort of builds his backstory up properly. Mm-hmm. If you want to look at them, you could have a completely different set of movies. As in like. We're talking Zack Snyder 300.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of crazy I could imagine. And I could even imagine it as like, Sin City cinematics.
It does actually. Well, that game kind of reminds me, like the few bits I've seen of it remind me of like the 300.
Absolutely. The differences between the original games and this one is the original ones were just hack and slashes, right?
Yeah.
So you were just playing to kill as many things as possible. You don't think, and some of the cutscenes are hilarious, almost hilarious. Some of the violence that goes into them.
Yeah.
But this one, the 2018 one, where it's flipped it up and it's become this big character-driven story, which I also love because it's left wide open for more. And I believe that they've already kind of announced the second one. Love it. It's a phenomenal game, and I'd love to see the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I heard really good things about it, as well as like just the change it gave for the series with like including the kid.
Yeah.
I thought it was like everything that I read was like, this is a great little twist. No one was expecting this, and it's a refreshing twist on the.
And you know what? The one thing that pisses me off about any movie is when you have a forced kid character, because no matter what the kid, no matter how good the actor is, if it's a forced character like a sidekick it's going to be fucking annoying. Like, I don't care.
You like kids, Tommy.
No, I like kids. I like kids, but they're almost always
Hide your
an
babies.
annoying side part.
Hide your babies.
Oh my god. It's not like that. Come on. But in this, the best thing about in this is he's supposed to be annoying. So you could get the worst, shittiest kid. No, I'm kidding. But you could literally have, like, he's supposed to be annoying, but there is a second arc built underneath Kratos's, which is Atreus who builds, and then he's got to learn sort of certain things about himself and about the world, and that's super interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Random thought, because you said like kid actors. The Alienist, which I was recently watching in last week's episode, I just realized the main chick. Well, I didn't realize this. My girlfriend did. She goes, "Oh, that's Dakota Fanning. Dakota Fanning's grown up and is the main chick." And I was like, she's like, "Oh, that looks like Dakota Fanning." I was like, "Yeah, no way. It does kind of look like her. I could see it."
Really?
But it's not. And then she looks up. She's like, "No, it literally is Dakota Fanning."
Oh,
it's crazy.
How old is Dakota Fanning?
She's an adult. It's weird. It's weird seeing someone that you've seen on the big screen as like a kid.
I don't know what to say.
Be an adult. It's weird to me. Anyway.
So interesting. I missed this in the news today, but another sort of child actress growing up, formerly known as Ellen Page, has come out as trans this week.
And
she is now known
that
as
is news that I was
Elliot Page.
How did I not say that? Gail told me about that news.
Good for her.
Just before.
Good for Elliot. Good for Elliot. It's
great for her, and she's been a lot of stuff.
I believe it's a he now.
Sorry, he has been in a lot of stuff.
I mean, you know what? Like,
it's
I feel like
Juno. He's been in was it Inception?
Yeah,
Inception.
We need to do a pod about.
God, that
look, we're getting way off topic.
Yeah. Anyway,
good for Elliot. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Everyone do whatever the hell you want to do.
Yeah, liberal society, all about it.
Yeah, exactly. So what's your second one?
Second one I'm much more proud of. Like, Alan Wake was a little hard for me kind of to talk through because I didn't play it. Also, it's like pretty heady.
Okay.
Mass Effect.
Oh,
and
amazing.
Honestly, just do the whole trilogy.
So what you're saying is you went on any YouTube video and went, best video game.
Dude, I actually
if you watch any top 10.
I love this game. And I forgot how much I loved it.
It's on Xbox as well?
It was. I played it on the 360.
Okay.
And I don't even remember if I finished it, to be honest. But because it was like one of those games that's like invest so much of your time. And I think I got left college and was in my first job and just like somewhere along the way stopped. But so like well known for being an incredible trilogy, with one being exceptional, two being this standout phenomenal like game, and then three being less good because of the ending, but yet still an incredible. Where do you start with that? I'm pretty sure not finished the game, it's hard for me to comment on the three. But I've heard like pretty good things about like how the ending was like satisfying but frustrating, which honestly like most good endings are.
Sure.
Like you're not supposed to just, at least the ones that I like, should have some loss. Like if you went through a story and you didn't feel completely unsettled after it, like then nothing changed and it wasn't driving.
Spoilers for this game from I think 10 years ago now, but I think what people were more frustrated by was the game was sold to you as all your decisions through the game are going to impact.
Yeah.
But what it turned out to be was just a choice of red, yellow, blue. It's like a choice, one of three choices, and you just click a button.
And basically all those choices before didn't end up pulling forward. And okay, fair enough. I mean, and that is a fair criticism for like the ending, I guess. But the choices definitely did play a part in how you got there game to game. Because I remember there was a time when I basically picked my slam piece to save in the game instead of like my old mate.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to choose one of them.
Piece.
And I went totally bros, but I totally avoided the bros before hose code.
Oh, no.
And left old mate stranded to be gunned down. And in the next game, like he was gone and the chick was there. And then I had all these storylines with her. So like obviously there was some elements of that, but I guess maybe fair call. It didn't affect the outcome of the end.
So talking about the cinematic universe, how are we going about this?
Dude, I guess we're just going through the plot. Like Mass Effect is set like within the Milky Way galaxy, apparently like 2 centuries in advance of where we are now.
Cool.
Which like, and they have faster than light travel.
Space sci-fi.
Yeah, it's a space opera, space sci-fi.
Perfect.
But like, by the way, random aside, like we're not getting like faster than light travel in the next like 200 years.
Not
like
a chance.
Games, come on, kick these things out quite a far. But
wow.
I don't like Elon Musk has got a lot of work to do.
It's not going to happen.
So my point is like maybe make this more realistic, set it like 500 years in the future.
Sure.
Anyway, not 200. At this point, though, it is possible to use mass transit devices called mass relays to travel around the galaxy, which is why this might be more realistic because they've found these devices that allow them to travel.
This is in game, right?
Yeah.
This isn't just happening right now.
No, this isn't. Yes, this didn't just happen. Elon didn't just make some. That would have been crazy news.
So what's the crux of the game? So what's
I guess the crux
drawing? What part of the story is going to fuel?
I'm trying to get there. It's huge, dude. It's hard to put down into a sentence, but I guess like it's if I had to, you've got basically hundreds of races of different species at different varying degrees of development and like obviously culture.
Yep.
So there's things around like racism that you can play into. There's just like xenophobia. There's this thing called the Citadel, which is almost like you could think of it as like the G8, right?
Okay.
Which is like the top countries by wealth that are allowed to make decisions that affect like the entire galaxy. So there's all these political ramifications. You've got corporate agencies, shadow governments, people profiting off of what becomes like the end of the world. It's got everything, right? It's got like aliens who, based off the lore, were in this crazy war and a disease basically genetically wiped out their ability to reproduce. And so there's all this like blood feud of like generations before playing into things. It's just got so much intrigue and lore for stories to be told that this should totally be a long form television show.
You're going to go long form television.
I was by one of the big, if you're going to do it, Amazon's throwing money at everything. You could try and make it into 3 movies, but I don't think it'd do it justice.
So then do you go the way of you make a direct adaptation and you have Commander Shepard, he or she, whichever you would go for, or do you look to a different character?
That is the hardest part, and that is the exact thing that I was going to ask you when I went to cast. I was like, it's hard to just be like, you should cast someone as this character who's supposed to be like totally you and your decisions, right?
For sure.
But I did make an attempt at it.
Well, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, like you could go about it in so many different ways. Like, so there's theories, and I mean, why do I know these things? There's theories about the game that Commander Shepard is just this mythical idea. It's not necessarily about the person. So you could almost go the route of each show or episode or season has a slightly different person because it's someone telling a story, right?
Yeah.
And then they have a different interpretation of the story.
I would almost prefer it to be like this thing like Game of Thrones where you have like this intro where it shows the different places, right? And I keep going back to Game of Thrones, but like
you really love Game of Thrones.
But like you're some weeks you're right, you're following like this character to show off this storyline, and it's more an ensemble of characters. And sure, there may be a Captain Shepard, but he's just one element of like the week, right?
I like that.
The way Jon Snow eventually became one of the main dudes, he wasn't in the beginning, right? He was sharing time with everyone.
So like it could be broader than just the original trilogy.
For sure, it expands out, and then it'll obviously. But I think the storyline, I think it's a good story.
So interesting.
They should stick to that plot.
So you could almost like Game of Thrones builds up to, like you say, the Jon Snow plot.
Expand out.
You could
contract.
start with a broader cast, and then you see the Shepherd coming through. That'd be really interesting. Cool.
Or multiple. Like my point is,
yeah.
it starts big and expands. At some point, when you're getting to the end, it contracts.
Who do you see?
Dude, the funny part.
Who do you see directing this?
Dude, I couldn't even, because it's a showrunner thing now.
Sure.
Like when you make it a show, it becomes a whole different thing. It's almost like somebody who's a big nerd that really cares. As long as you really care,
I'm a big nerd,
and you've got some film experience. Look what David Benioff and DB Wise pulled off, having no experience.
Yeah,
right?
True.
For the longest time, they faked everybody out.
Till season let's not get into this.
7, 8. Anyway, dude, the casting side of it is actually really interesting because I didn't realize how many legit actors were already in this. The Elusive Man, who's this like crazy there's this Spectra agency. It's just kind of like this underworld crime thing. The Elusive Man is voiced by Martin Sheen.
Oh, really?
And actually, he would be like the perfect guy to cast for it as well. So you're like, okay,
Martin Sheen's not as young as he used to be.
He's not supposed to be young.
Okay,
He's this old, creepy dude who's like running things.
Oh, great.
But I take your point. He may look older than even I remember.
We'll de-age him. We'll use some of that Disney money.
Joker is already played by Seth Green.
Okay.
So it's like the funny pilot.
Okay.
Could totally still take on that role. Rex is played by this guy named Stephen Barr, who I didn't actually know, but he's in a lot of stuff.
Okay.
And it fits the bill. And then as far as other characters, there's a bunch of other characters in this thing, so I could go on for days. But
amazing.
There's a lot
that's so interesting.
People to cast. And I think the coolest part about this and why it would be like a really good thing to do beyond just the lore is the themes.
Sure.
And like the theme of it, I think, is like understanding like prevents conflict. So like the more you can try and understand something from a different walk of life, different race, whatever it may be, you're going to be able to find common ground generally. But at what point does that end?
And that's a political aspect. And I see where you're coming from, because obviously Mass Effect is a first-person shooter right at its heart.
I think it's actually third person. Yeah, anyway.
Whichever. It's a shooter at its heart.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting in not a similar way to how you're describing Game of Thrones, that the real driver behind all of it is the politics.
Yeah.
But there are these elements of, like action thrown in as well, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And the theme, I think, is super relevant to even like today. Like you see a lot of conflicts that could be ended peacefully if like everyone understood everyone's motives and we were able to see the goals of both sides and find a common ground. But like, does all conflict come down to a lack of understanding, or is there at some point
an element now?
Seriously though,
is political hour?
Well, this is something that's relevant. At some point, is there just like someone in the game, right? In the game sense, is there an alien who's so away from our own ability to think, or who doesn't care to even come to a common ground with us? Does it even make sense to put in the effort to try and understand them? Because that's hard. It's hard to get everyone on the same page.
True.
And that's what, like, without spoiling it, that's kind of there does come a point, I think the game says, where no, like, you got to look out for yourself. But there's heavy themes. So yeah, that's Mass Effect. I think it's cool thing to adapt. I hope someone does it. Actually, I'd be stoked. What's your second one?
Yeah, I feel like there should be something in the works. Yeah, cool. My second one is another hack and slash, but I'm gonna run with it anyway. Do you know the game Devil May Cry?
I do. Capcom, yeah.
It is, and I played this growing up, and I just think it's a really interesting game to bring to the cinema, because not only is there's a lot of comic books behind it as well, so it's like it's got a lot of lore in the background, but it's really different to anything you would see right now, like so different. And I think there's a lot of cool things about it. So to give a really quick overview of it, I mean, there are a number of versions to choose from, lest we speak about the attempted remake DMC. That was dire. Let's not talk about that. Let's
Was there a remake of the...
They just after the fourth one, they tried to remake it, and they redid the main character to make him really cool and edgy.
The remake of the first one?
It was just a remake, so they just ground up, same backstory, but like they redesigned the main character like fucking shit.
Capcom anyway, loves a remake.
Let's talk about it the better. But the long story, the crux of the story is that you have this hero Dante, more of an anti-hero, who is a half human, half demon. He's the son of a demon who essentially helped the human race stop a war between demons and humans, and used part of his soul to close the gate between the two realms. And that's essentially where the whole thing kicks off. This demon then falls in love with a human woman, hence Dante being half and half. And he has a twin brother, which is all just in the mix. That's within the first 5 minutes, the opening credits of the first game. And then you have this incredible hack and slash adventure where he's essentially trying to close portals between, demon world and the human world. And he's this reluctant hero, but he's a complete badass at the same time. He's smug, he's almost arrogant, but at the same time backs it up. He's got all these crazy powers, because he is half demon, so he's got incredible healing. He runs around with a twin pair of guns and a big fucking sword. So it's really it's fun, but has a lot of interesting lore to it as well. I think this one was the hardest for me when I was thinking of who to cast for the main character, because it's really hard to get someone who has that level of almost arrogance.
Yeah, it's also a super anime-looking character, isn't it? So it's always hard to imagine someone in real 100%. Life with the
what I was trying to think. So when I was trying to think of how this could work as a film or TV show, which is kind of what we're talking about. I'm not just talking about my favorite game. Yeah. I was starting to think who could build this world with all these weird fucking demons and this grotesque world where blood's used to get through a door, for example, and all this crazy fucking shit. And then I just started thinking about Guillermo del Toro and started thinking about how he has all these practical effects in his movies, and I was like, I can just see it now. He would be perfect for this. Like, if he could do slightly better with his better action. He's like, think about it, he did Pacific Goddamn Rim. He does incredible action scenes. Yeah. But I feel like it's more personal and grounded in the way that Hellboy was.
He's done
the first two Hellboy movies. Okay. Pacific Rim. He's done so much stuff. Pan's Labyrinth. He's incredible. I
thought it was the guy that did Pan's Labyrinth, and then you said Pacific Rim, and I'm like, no way did the same guy make those two movies.
He's such an interesting director, and I think he would be...
Shape of Water. Weird one.
Shape of Water, yeah.
It's a weird movie.
And what's interesting about this game is, and we kind of talked about this like just before the show, like its roots are in horror.
Yeah.
So, like, it has that horror element. I don't know if you want to elaborate what you know about this game.
I don't know a ton other than, to be honest, the premise that you described reminds me of The Witcher a bit. Like, he's stuck between two worlds, but it's very different.
No, but I think what I was...
you talking about... Okay.
Yeah, it was like a rework. So it was essentially a rework of an old Resident Evil game.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, it's I think it's really interesting for that it's got all these horror elements, but has like all this weird mess up story on top of it. So when I was sort of thinking about, Guillermo del Toro just ran away with it in my head, and I could just imagine a lot of the games, in fact all the games to be fair, are essentially you are either on an island or you are in a tower and you are going through area by area trying to break down and get to the next bit. And I really like that idea. And something in my head was just thinking of, do you know The Raid? Do you ever see that movie?
No. Indonesian
movie where it's essentially martial arts, and it's a dude who's a special forces police officer, and he goes into a building effectively on his own, and it's a bit like that scene in Daredevil where you first meet Punisher, and he's just in a corridor, and it's all these incredible one shots of him destroying all these guys one by one. And I just have this in my head, this mashup of this really claustrophobic long one shots with like these incredible horror Guillermo del Toro moments thrown on top of it. I'm just like, I'm excited just thinking about it. Like, this just sounds so fucking cool. Like,
well, what will the story, like, what I would ask is, like, certain games you're like, okay, I could see how you make a story out of this.
Yeah.
Some of the, like, games, I'm like, you can't necessarily follow the game's main story because it's get boring.
At a top level, it's real simple. He's just trying to stop the demons coming back into our world. And there's one main demon. I forgot his name. I think it's Mundo. I have lost
Good old Mundo.
Yeah, well, he's basically trying to stop this one demon that his father locked away coming back into our world. Okay. So it's really broad premise, like that's the end game. Yeah. But you can have all these side stories, like his brother turns out to want to fight him as well, and there's all of the characters woven into it. And I just think it in my head just sounds fucking cool. So when I was thinking about who I would love to cast, I got really lost in sort of the arrogant side of Dante, like who could pull off the arrogance and still be cool at the same time. And then I was actually listening to a different podcast, and they brought up Stranger Things. And I know we just sort of talked about it a moment ago, but like, do you know Billy from Stranger Things? Yeah, I knew
dude, bro. I saw him in Bondi like last week.
Fuck, really?
He was just walking around. Anyway, sorry.
No, 100%. But
yes, he would pull that off.
That arrogance, that I think he needs to bulk up for the role. He might not be like, people might complain, but like, in terms of just the personality,
he'd look right. Like, you could figure it out.
Give him a fucking wig. Everyone wears wigs in these movies these days. He'd be great. Like, honestly, the only other person I could really think of, put my finger on who I would think do this role justice, and I hate myself for saying this, every sinew of my body hates me, is Jared Leto. Like, I don't think he's got the arrogance chops, but I think he's genuinely a very good actor, and he could probably...
Yeah, he is. He's just always played like really, really weird roles. So I've never seen him in one where I'm like, okay, you're like a confident dude. Like, he's always like, last time, what's the last movie I saw him in? Probably Dallas Buyers Club.
Yeah. Great movie.
It's like, I don't know anyone else that could play that, but I've only seen him in those extreme roles.
Oh, there you go. Okay, well, we're really not powering through these at all. Give us a third one. Let's try.
Oh, sorry. We'll go quick. Halo.
Amazing.
I just think that...
so we really went for these weird indie games.
I mean, like, Halo, I didn't want to put it on because it's so popular and just such a blockbuster already. That you'd be like, do we need a movie? But, like, the story of...
Great.
The original story of, like, even, like, the prequel of Halo 2, and Halo 3, mainly the first 3, to be honest, it's phenomenal. Like, that's what got me into the series. Now I just play for the gameplay because the story's become crap.
It's weird now, isn't it?
It's terrible. It's just, it's like, obviously it's a new studio and it's just not a good story.
Right. But they're making a new one for the new Xbox, correct?
They are. And again, not looking forward to the story because I think they've lost me now.
But
Like,
you think they'd have learned from all that? And, like we are in the time of revivals. Like Devil May Cry is a perfect example. Like they had lost their way entirely, and they brought out 5, which was a continuation of the original games.
I would hope they do.
And everyone went, "Fuck yeah!"
But I'm worried that like also like
Fuck yeah!
the stuff coming out of that studio, they've lost like 3 creative directors while
really?
the game's been made. Like it doesn't sound like they will get it right, but maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. But in any case, I don't think they need to make movies about the other parts. Just like the first 3, the original series, the original trilogy, like it's got crazy themes of like how religion or like motifs and all sorts of things around like religious extremism and how it's created and how it affects like outcomes in society, government surveillance kind of stories like and storylines and like what is the cost of having mass government surveillance? What is the cost of extreme militarization?
Funny you bring this up, by the way.
Yeah.
I think they're actually making it into a TV show.
So I heard they are.
2021.
I heard they are, and the reason why I'm saying it's not the same is I don't think it's actually made. I think it's like a different offshoot of lore. It's not the actual game storyline.
It's Master Chief, so...
Okay, maybe I'm wrong then. Maybe I cheated.
Look, I'm looking... I don't know, but like I'd like to know your vision of that. I think it's more about your vision of it. How would you see it?
I don't think you need to do this as a show. I think it could be a movie. Like
Okay.
a series of movies. If you could make 3 movies, you could easily do it.
Okay.
2 or 3 movies. But
I mean, it's got the cinematic, like... You could imagine those big cinematic shots for this type of movie, right?
for sure, and it doesn't like
the
there's
moments.
actually like if you look at I think when I was in like high school or like grammar school I read the book.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay.
One of the books that they was made like to add lore to it. Like there's actually a lot of lore and story that is really really good. That it doesn't have to just be this action movie, right? You could have obviously sequences,
Yeah.
but between those sequences, you could have like a story driven by like intrigue.
So what's the crux of the story? So what's driving the story forward?
So in essence, like basically, humanity is the very beginning of the Halo story. Humanity is like out to the farthest outreaches of the galaxy. There's a unified government that's trying to bring in these outer colonies to be a part of it, and these outer colonies are really rebelling against this, right? And there's a lot of piracy because of that. And the crux of like how Master Chief and the Spartans, as they're called, are born, or is actually a result of like a military experiment of kidnapping children and creating super soldiers to basically get these rebel colonies in line and become these super soldiers that can govern the galaxy. And by happenstance, while they're doing this and like halfway through their training or maybe like 3/4 of the way through their training, this random alien race just invades their kind of space. And obviously everything they thought they were going to use these soldiers for changes, and they start just fighting for their life against this like much superior, the Covenant in the game, this much superior technologically advanced race of a bunch of different aliens that are just basically trying to exterminate the humans. And so it really does explore that theme of like, do the ends justify the means? Like a very unethical act, right, of like kidnapping children from their families, replacing them with clones that die after a year.
Right. Oh, really?
They're actually the ones that end up potentially saving humanity, because if they didn't have these things, they would have never been able to stop these, or at least even keep up with these these aliens, but they weren't actually made for that purpose in the beginning. So it's one of those like utopian society things, right? Does it?
Who do you imagine directing?
I could see Peter Jackson doing this really well. And actually, I think
really?
he was. There
Like
was
a space opera.
There was at one point. It's not really an opera, this one, but like, well, even honestly, anyone that paid attention to this, it's got enough. You don't need a like crazy writer to rehash this. Like the story is good, and there's actually big plot reveals. And I don't really have a director in mind per se, but I'm pretty sure way back when Peter Jackson there was almost a Halo movie, and he almost did. He was like rumored to be directing, but this is back when like Lord of the Rings was a thing. But I just think it would be totally fun to explore if they did it right and they didn't make it like super campy and blockbustery. They made it like an intense like look into like what does it do to the human psyche to be like this child soldier, and like almost like a Hurt Locker thing.
That's
and took that element with like also, is it okay to like mass militarize humanity, right? Because we're already doing it.
I think that does sound super cool.
Yeah, I hope they do it. I don't know if they will though.
All right. Well, I realize we've almost hit an hour already, so we're going to be a long one tonight. But so my third one then was and I don't know if you wouldn't have played this, but Injustice Gods Among Us. And I thought I'd bring it back to our like theme of the show, which is, you know, comic books and comic book movies a little bit. So this...
Never heard of this one. Looking it up.
This is the one that I mentioned before that I haven't played all of. So it's essentially a fighting game, but you fight as the characters from the DC universe. It's incredible, and the story behind it also has a bunch of comics that back up the game. So what it is
I'm excited to see how you create a fighting game to have a storyline for a movie.
It's so interesting. So listen to the storyline, okay, right? So it's set in an alternative DC universe, so you can do whatever you want, basically, right? And the Joker tricks Superman into killing Lois Lane. So already you're kind of nervous about what's going to happen. And I mean, this is pretty much spoiled in the trailer anyway. But then Superman then goes, he breaks.
Okay.
Him killing Lois Lane breaks him, and he goes and he murders the Joker. So Joker gets murdered. What happens is then there's a brief nuclear war which sort of breaks Metropolis. But Superman becomes this crazy dictator who bends a bunch of the Justice League to his own will and makes them sort of forces them to do his bidding, a lot of them, or basically kills them. But because it is in a different dimension and, you know, you can do whatever you want, Batman becomes a bit of a resistance to this. And it's really like this fun idea of Batman building a little resistance against him, but then he realizes that he can't defeat Superman on his own. He has a weapon that can defeat Superman, and it's actually a kryptonite weapon. To get it, he needs all of the Justice League members. Okay. Some of which are dead because Superman murdered them. So what he does is he creates a portal to a different universe within DC and brings through a bunch of them. But then the story really kicks off. It's this huge battle between a bunch of DC characters who've gone rogue. For example, Aquaman has to fight evil Aquaman.
Quick question. Is this like a player versus player fighting game?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what it is it builds up all these story plot elements, and then it has you do, like, pits you in the fight with these crazy characters against each other. Now, so all this happens, and eventually what we end up with is this end of tournament battle where Bruce realizes that, and I'm going to spoil this game massively, so Bruce realizes there is no way to beat Superman without bringing through Superman from the other universe. So what he does is he brings his good Superman through from a universe that Lois Lane was never murdered, and then you have the big final showdown between the two. And I just have this crazy, like, this couldn't be a TV show. This would have to be 3, maybe 4 movies. Like,
what? I'm gonna play devil's advocate here and call bullshit. Here's what I'll say. This is probably the least likely to be made movie of all the things we've talked about.
Absolutely, completely. Yeah. But this, well, you're asking what I'd like to see.
This is fanboy Tommy just getting his seat on the pulpit, being like, "This is what I want."
Look, you tell me.
Give it to me.
You ask me what I want to see. I'm telling you. Like, there is so much interesting backstory. We've never seen a version of Superman who snaps on screen. Like, you've obviously seen a bit of him in that Justice League film where he goes a bit nuts, but so what? It also shows Bruce Wayne for once doing detecting rather than just beating people to death, which, you know what, I think that's always good to it's great to set Batman out as this, he's a ninja, right? He's a crazy badass, but also seeing him detecting, doing the thing, you know, he's the world's greatest detective. I'd like to see that on screen one time. But then you imagine having DC superheroes fighting DC superheroes. I think that just sounds incredible. Now, it's tough to do like fan casting for this because you could do whatever you want. Like, you could literally do Crisis on Infinite Earths. You could bring different characters from different versions of
I don't
films.
think there's a real point to it.
But I only really had one director in mind when I thought about this, and it's funny because he's obviously doing the current
Snyder.
DC movies.
You say fucking Zack Snyder.
I think he would be...
This is just the jizz of all your favorite things. Just give it a canvas of...
Hear me out. Like, I don't personally like him for the actual Justice League stuff that's happening. Personally, like, I'm excited to see it, but this is way more suited to Zack Snyder than any of the stuff he's currently doing. This storyline and these beats, there is some character progression in there, obviously, but it's more about the big cinematic moments. It's about those big hero moments where stuff comes off. And who doesn't want to see Superman fighting Superman? We already had it in Superman 3, sort of. Like, that would be great.
Yeah.
What do you think of the premise?
I think your premise is awesome. I'm green-lighting it for 4 movies. Look, we're getting Zack Snyder on it. Here's $1 billion. Make this video game a movie.
It will be incredible. Look, are there any other ones just to touch on briefly, because I know Just ones you can just fire off, because there's a few that I wrote down.
I wrote down a couple, but I found most of them were already about to be movies.
Oh, really? Go on.
Yeah. Well, the Resident Evil one I wrote down was the one I originally wrote down. The Last of Us.
Yep. I tried to stay away from those ones, but that's interesting.
Yeah. No, I just didn't even. I think we talked about it and I just forgot.
Yeah. If you want a similar one, then
Uncharted.
Similar ones what we just talked about, Batman Arkham Asylum. Similar dark video game, but very much based within one space, and the Batman outwitting the Joker.
That's a Arkham Asylum is like something that hasn't been explored in like film that much.
So
I think they stop in it.
Except in Batman and Robin.
Did they go there?
I can't remember.
Really
I
fell
think
asleep.
they did.
I think they go there in Batman Begins for like one scene, but it's like super like lame. It's like just like a normal jail, and I'm like, this is not what a Arkham Asylum is. It's supposed to be full of nutters.
I feel like we've both been very cinematic with our game choices. Do you have any like weird ones?
Honestly, I didn't. I was trying to like actually think about things that realistically could happen. You actually threw a curveball in here with the old, what is it? Injustice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a curveball.
Well, the weird one that I would really love to see is, and this is going to be such a throwback. My brother's going to love this reference because we used to play this all the time as kids. Did you ever play Streets of Rage on the old Sega? I think it was Mega Drive in the UK.
No.
This is like your bog standard side-scrolling beat 'em up game.
Yeah.
But it's got this funky backstory where the city's been taken over and the police are all corrupt, and there's only the 2 or 3 of you that have to go in and defeat all the bad guys. It's just like insane. Like it is just a side-scrolling video. The ending's great as well. Like spoilers for this game, it was out in like the 90s. But like at the end of it, if you get to the end, it turns out there's different endings. But if the 2 of you make it to the end, like if you're playing 2-player, that thing we used to be able to do with video games. If the 2 of you make it to the end, then the bad guy makes you fight each other. And then, but often it then sends you, like the winner goes back to the beginning of the game and has to do it 1 player.
Oh, wow.
It's intense as hell. And like, I was just thinking about this and I was like, there's no, like, I can't honestly think of any good reason or good way to make this game. I can't remember what I was watching. I was watching a video and they mentioned, have you ever seen Escape from New York?
That sounds really familiar. Was that like PlayStation era?
No, sorry, it's a movie. It's
I'm thinking about that taxi game. Wasn't there a taxi game that used to be really big?
No, so like if you know Escape from New York, it's Kurt Russell who plays character Snake Plissken.
Kurt Russell.
He's incredible in this. Like he's almost the prototype for a game I'm going to mention in a moment. But it's this dystopian future where New York is the only city left, and he has to go into the part that's the prison, which I think is Staten Island, one of the island, maybe Manhattan, and he has to go in to get the president out because the president's plane's gone down in there, and it's this big fucking free for all, and it's just like we're gonna have to talk about this at some point because it's on the rewatchables. It's great.
Okay.
Well, I can imagine that sort of movie if you could mix it with the sort of like George Miller who did Mad Max.
Yeah.
If you could mix it with those sort of visuals and that sort of style, I could imagine this weird side-scrolling beat 'em up just being fucking incredible. I got really excited thinking about it.
I just pulled up a list to like give myself some ideas for ones that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah.
Your Infamous is number 6 on the list for games that should be movies.
Infamous? Do you mean
sorry.
Injustice?
Okay, no, I guess Infamous is something different.
Infamous is a different game.
Yeah, fair enough. It's still a bad idea. Sorry, mate. Skyrim is on here, which is one that I had thought about, but I was like, it's just another fantasy game.
Never got into it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Would have liked to.
I really did enjoy it.
Would have liked to.
But I'm not sure that, I didn't want to talk about that and another. I'm well into fantasy right now in this book anyway. But how did I not think of this, Tommy? I'm ashamed.
Okay.
Red Dead. It's basically
I thought that was your
it's
number one.
It's basically a movie.
I literally thought that's what you were going to talk about. So when you said to me Alan Wake, I was like, huh?
I can't believe I subbed Alan. Shame on me. Well, sorry, Alan Wake, you're getting booted for Red Dead. This should be a movie. It's already a movie.
Well, I think this is a well we can come back to. I really do, because I think I've got so many written down. There's a lot. We didn't even touch on Metal Gear Solid, which is the original cinematic game. So we could have to come back to this. I think it's going to be fun. And when Cyberpunk comes out, maybe that could fall on the list as well.
For sure.
Who knows?
For sure, man. I'm going to go, thanks everybody. It's been real. It's been fun. I'm going to go play some Red Dead now.
You've completely missed out our classic section.
But how do we do Aquaman?
Correspondence.
Oh, correspondence. I was going to say Aquaman. It's
you just want to talk about fucking Aquaman. Well, actually, before we do that, let me quickly ask you one last question.
Yeah.
And this was actually the first thing I thought of when we started talking about this, and when we started talking about doing this. But it was, I put a flip on it, and we could even do a full pod on this, which is which movie worlds would you like to play as a video game?
Oh, yeah, I think that's a whole pod.
It's a whole podcast, but like,
which movie worlds would I like to have? Like Game of Thrones for sure, off the top of my head.
be really slow.
I just don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
Because the story is so integral to it.
Well, the ones that got my mind going were
slow.
I started.
It'd be like Mass
Taking
Effect.
3 weeks
Mass
to go
Effect
from
though
one end
does
to the
have a
other.
lot of talking, dude. That
Oh,
game.
really?
If you never played it, it's like 90% dialogue options.
Oh, okay. I'll check it out. I need to check it out. To be fair, like it's a classic.
They're remaking it anyway.
Okay, well, the ones I was thinking of were, first of all, I started thinking about The Matrix, which I would have, like, they did make
There
a
is
video
a game.
game for it.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
good.
Well, that's what I was thinking of. Apparently the game is better than the 2 sequels.
Yeah.
But that made me then think of the John Wick movies, which I think could I mean, it's tailor-made
Yeah.
to be a cover shooter video game, right?
Fair.
Like, that could be great. Anyway, I think we could do a whole podcast on this, and I love that you didn't even think of
My favorite.
You didn't even think of
story.
Red Dead.
I was like telling Tommy this game is so good. It's like Martin Scorsese directed this game, and I don't think of it for an adaptation to a movie. It's a shame. It's honestly better than any Western I've watched recently. And I've watched.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the Red Dead Redemption's Western story is so well done. And I'm talking about number 2, but honestly, you could do either one.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well,
what's
I
our
mean, that could
correspondence
be
for the
2
week?
full ones. Well, yeah, we do have some correspondence. Thank you very much for everyone who contacted us. That's very nice of you. We like to hear from everyone. One that I should have read out last week and I got called out for was friend of the show Matt did email back about, he likes to call you Wet Thal, basically.
Everyone does these days.
It's a thing. You are Wet Thal. But he did send a really lovely, nice email. He, again, thanked us for the show, which is incredibly nice of him. He did also say that he found a different list about rating comic book movies. Now,
Please don't.
if you...
Please don't.
This is a slightly different take on it. And they're not necessarily cinematic ones. However, the one he found, and it's going to spoil it in case we ever do look at it, is the 1990s Captain America was number 1. Now, I haven't seen it, but I would love to sit and watch some dire...
Probably so bad.
Well, he also mentioned that it had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 on it from 1993, and along with Spawn from 1997. I remember Spawn being dreadful.
Didn't see it.
I just remember it being absolutely shit.
Turtles, though, I would be down to watch that kind of a bad movie because, again, goofy. But, yeah, Captain America. Not sure I can sit through that.
And he said another one, I'll throw him for fun, is Condor Man from the 80s. I've never even heard of it. So.
Condor Man.
Oh, God.
What's his power? Just like massive wingspan? Should play basketball. Sorry, I'm just...
I don't know.
I'm just riffing
I'm
now.
just lost. I'm like,
Getting
what
tired.
is this Condor Man? Okay, well, he also says, you remember I mentioned that I potentially had a new nickname for you at the end of last one, which was Penguin Man?
Penguin Man, yes.
Yeah. Apparently it was when we were talking about Catwoman and how she discovered her powers. I still don't know what the reference is. I'll probably re-listen to it at some point and think it was hilarious, but you can be Penguin Man from now on. Nah, yeah, that's absolutely not going to happen. Well, Matt, we really appreciate the feedback. Send over that list. We'd love to look at it. I think he says it might be done by Rotten Tomatoes scores, so send it over. We'll have a look, and if we ever decide to go back to that, well,
It's going to be a while, I gotta say. I don't know if I can do that anytime soon. Anyway.
yeah. Well, thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate it. We really appreciate all the correspondence. Any more? Drey would love to tell you what the address is.
Yeah, it's thepodcastassemble@gmail.com.
Yeah, that's it. Do you remember the Twitter?
Podcast Assemble.
So you can search Podcast Assemble or it's pod_assemble.
Pod_assemble.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the correspondence. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Drey.
Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Speak
Over
soon.
and out.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.